Hare Krishna. Thank you, Pawan Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Jai Shri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Namah Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminate Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivas Adi Gaur Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. Okay, so we'll continue with our Vaishnav song, Vaishnav bhajan for this week, for the one final time today, but many, many more times in our lifetime. Should never forget these beautiful instructional songs, bhajans by our acharyas. So may we continue to remember them as we go through and grow through our life. But let's continue this for today. By Shri Narottam Das Thakur from Prarthana. Gauranga bolite habe pulaka sharira, Hari Hari bolite nayane bhabenira. Ar kabe nitai chandra karuna hoibe, Samsara vasana mora kabe tuchha haibe. Vishaya chariya kabe shuta habe mana, Kabe ham hirabo Shri Vrindavana. रूप रघुनाथ पदे हईबे आकुति कबे हम बुझाबो से जुगल प्रीति रूप रघुनाथ पदे रहु मोराश प्रार्थना करो ए सदा नरोत्तम दास रूप रघुनाथ पदे रहु मोराश प्रार्थना करो ए सदा नरोत्तम दास Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare. लाल समय प्रार्थना की जय, श्री नरोत्तम दास ठाकुर की जय, जगत गुरु श्री प्रभुपाद की जय. Okay, translation. Anybody would like to read translation?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, I can read.
Hare Krishna, Kishore Radha Mataji, yes.
When will that opportune moment come to us, when there will be shivering of the body, as soon as we chant Lord Gauranga's name? While chanting Hare Krishna, when will there be tears in eyes? When will I obtain the mercy of Lord Nityananda Chandra? When by his mercy will the desire for material enjoyment become very insignificant? When the mind is completely purified, being freed from material anxieties and desires, then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, and then my spiritual life will be successful. When shall I be very much eager to study the books left by the 6 Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami? By their instruction, I shall be able to properly understand the loving affairs of Radha. My only aspiration is to attain the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Narottam Das constantly prays to attain the lotus feet.
Hare Krishna, thank you so much, Mataji. Yeah, so the process of getting mercy is like that. We cannot directly get the Lord's mercy. So we approach the Panchatattva, Lord Gauranga, as we were reading yesterday. Prabhupada was very nicely explaining the whole mood and mission of Lord Chaitanya, why he came, how he came. He came in the form of 5 different rupas, swarupas, and avatars, and Shakti Rupa, right, in terms of the 5 Panchatatvas. So the devotee, Lord Krishna, came in the mood of devotee as Gauranga, and then Nityananda as expansion of devotee, and Advaita Acharya as the incarnation of devotee of Lord Gauranga, and then pure devotee Gadadhar Pandit and the devotional energy, Srivas. So, and Prabhupada also explained that to receive the mercy, Maha Mantra, we may commit offenses. So that's why we chant the Panchatattva mantra first, because they don't take any offense and they are freely distributing this love of Godhead everywhere. No qualification required. Whether you're born anywhere, whether you are in any varna of life, varna ashram of life, doesn't matter. It is being equally distributed to all the people around the world by the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So, Krishna's mercy, Lord Jagannath's mercy, we can be obtained by praying to the Panchatattva. And then here, Narottam Das Thakur says, their mercy, Nityananda Prabhu's mercy, you can obtain by praying to the lotus feet of our Goswamis. And their mercy you can attain by praying to the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada and his predecessor, Guru Varga. And their mercy you can obtain by praying to our Guru Maharaj. So like that, it comes in parampara, but that is the process. So yeah, nicely Prabhupada was explaining yesterday that the whole reason why Lord Chaitanya came, and it is very nice. Last couple of weeks ago, we were singing glorifications of Rath Yatra by singing Jagannatha Ashtakam. This week we are singing the glories of Lord Gauranga, Nityananda, and the Goswamis, predominantly Gauranga in this bhajan, where Narottam Das Thakur is praying in the mode of humble servant, Dasana Das, to Lord Gauranga. So my plan next week is we'll sing something glorifying the Goswamis. So like that, we will go on as Narottam Das Thakur prays here. So Prabhupada is also in the same mode. Yesterday it was nice, Prabhupada in Prabhupada Lilamrita is saying the same thing, that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Panchatattva, they are dancing and chanting and they're freely distributing this love of Godhead. When Krishna came, this love was sealed, but when they came, they tore that seal and they plundered the love of Godhead and distributed it freely. They tasted it themselves and then they distributed it to everybody around them. And this flood of love of Godhead is spreading from the center of the universe in Mayapur Dham. From there, it is like flood, waves of flood that are spreading all around the world. So that is Prabhupada's mission and vision, that he wants to spread this from the central hub of Mayapur Dham. He wants to make that as a spiritual city, model city for the whole world to follow, where all the varnashramas, devotees live in proper facilities and order, and they make this the most sublime, spiritually active place in the world, from which in Bengal, and then everybody in India will follow Bengal, and then everybody in the world will follow India. So like that, and now he's came back to Calcutta, and yeah, he has had some stomach problem after having kachoris. But again, he remembers what his mother used to make for him, and he tells that to be made, and after he eats that puri and patala, which is like a squash, and then he says, my mother was right, and he feels much better. So we'll continue from here. Let's see what happens. Prabhupada has come back, like I said, from Mayapur to Calcutta, and he was planning to go to London. So we'll see what happens here. A Landi telegram arrived from Shyam Sundara, glorifying the preaching opportunities that awaited Prabhupada in London, where he would be picked up at the airport in a helicopter and flown to the main event, the greatest Rath Yatra ever held. The parade would proceed down Piccadilly Lane, climaxing under a large pavilion at Trafalgar Square. The telegram went on to say that millions of Englishmen, including certain very, very important people, were eager to see Srila Prabhupada, and that arrangements were underway for Prabhupada to instruct the Queen's eldest son, Prince Charles, in Krishna consciousness. Some of the promises were exaggerated. Srila Prabhupada knew But his desire to preach again in England was strong. George Harrison had given the devotees a large estate 45 minutes outside of London, and Prabhupada spoke of going there and installing deities of Radha and Krishna on Janmashtami day. Yet, even now, over a month before Janmashtami, he was feeling deeply affected by Shyam Sundara's invitation. Although still exhausted from dysentery, he considered flying immediately to London. Calling in those GBC secretaries and sannyasis with him in Calcutta, sitting up in bed while they sat before him on the floor, Prabhupada asked their advice. They concluded that he should go to a healthier climate, Los Angeles or Hawaii, to rest and recuperate. Prabhupada mildly agreed as his advisors decided Hawaii would be the best place, a place where the climate was ideal and where he would have few interruptions. Suddenly, however, he sat up straighter. He would return to the West, he said, but to London, not to Hawaii, and not to recuperate, but to preach. Let me strike while the iron is hot, he said. I think that I think that is an English maxim. If you do that, then you can keep the iron in shape. In the West, people are fed up, so we want to give them spiritual enlightenment. Prabhupada had immediately convinced the disciples with his forceful statements. There are two misleading theories in the West, he continued. One is that life comes from matter, and the other is that there is no life after death. You can just enjoy this life. They say everything is matter. So as this Krishna consciousness movement grows, the communists will be curbed down. People say they are trying for unity, but they have no brains to see how this will achieve unity. They have formed a big, complicated League of Nations and now United Nations, but they all fail. But this simple method of Rath Yatra all over the world, it is spreading. Jagannath means Lord of the Universe. So Lord Jagannath is now international God through our ISKCON. Therefore, I want to go to the West and give them these things. Although Prabhupada appeared physically unfit to immediately fly to London to the active preaching that awaited him, his disciples submitted, accepting this as another miracle by Lord Sri Krishna. London, July 7, 1973. Paravidha. It was Rath Yatra day. I saw Prabhupada coming into the temple and he didn't look very strong. I was really amazed, but I could understand that his strength was something spiritual. Dhruvanath. At the parade site, we were waiting to receive Srila Prabhupada at Marble Arch, where the procession starts. The Vyasasan was nicely decorated, and everybody was expecting Prabhupada simply to sit on his Vyasasan on the cart and just ride through the streets, just as he had done in other Rath Yatras. So it was to our great amazement and joy that when Prabhupada came, he refused to sit on the Vyasasan. He indicated that he would dance and lead the procession. Yogeshwara. They brought stairs up so Prabhupada could mount the Rath Yatra cart and sit down on the Vyasasan, but he waved them off and just started walking with the chariots, leading the chanting and dancing. Dhiras, Dhira Shanta. I twisted my ankle and couldn't walk, so I rode on the cart. Therefore, I could see Prabhupada very clearly. Revati Nandana Maharaj was chanting into the microphone from the cart, but after about 15 minutes of the procession, Prabhupada told the devotees to tell Revati Nandana Maharaj and others to come down and lead the Kirtana in the street with him. Revati Nandana. When Prabhupada saw his Vyasasana on the cart, he said, "No, I am just a devotee. I will go in the procession." We had a big, great Kirtan. Hamsaduta led, I led, Shyamsundara led. Different devotees traded off, leading this fantastic Kirtana. And Prabhupada was right in the middle of the Kirtan with his kartals the whole time. He was dancing back and forth and jumping up and down and dancing. Rohini Nandana. The cart was going quite slowly. Prabhupada walked about 20 or 30 yards ahead of the cart, leading the procession. Meanwhile, the Kirtan was coming from the Rath cart through microphones. Prabhupada called them all down and he got them all around himself, and they were chanting Hare Krishna. Ever so often, he would turn around and raise both his arms very majestically in the air and say, Jai Jagannath. Sometimes we would get a little further ahead, so then he would turn around and wait for the cart to come on. Sometimes he was dancing. Sometimes he would stand, raising his hands in the air. Sharadiya Dasi. Prabhupada would dance, and then after a few feet, he would turn around and look up at the deities with his arms raised. Then he would dance for a few moments, meditating on the deities, and then he would turn around and go on. In this way, he danced the entire way. The devotees held hands in a circle around him to protect him from the crowd. It was a wonderful, transcendental affair. Prabhupada was looking up at the deities, and all the devotees were behind him. Sudur Jaya. Prabhupada surprised us. We didn't know if he was sick or not, feeling weak and dizzy or not. Sometimes he looked very ill, and sometimes he looked like an 18-year-old boy. He surprised us. He had his cane in his hand, but raised it in the air as he danced. After a while, Shamsundara came up to me and said, "Listen, he is not going to make it. Prabhupada is very ill. I want you to follow in a car. Be within 30 seconds. Be within 30 seconds is reach, so we can put Prabhupada in the car immediately." Prabhupada was going down Park Lane, and from time to time he would turn back and raise his hands. He was going so fast that they couldn't pull the cart fast enough to keep up with him. He would have to wait for the cart to catch up. He would turn back, raise his hands, and say, "Hari Bol." Several times he did this. He was going so fast that he had to wait. The devotees were dancing, the weather was beautiful, and the crowd was wonderful. Dhruvanatha. The passers-by were rooted to the spot, looking at Prabhupada. A man of that age simply dancing and jumping in the air like a young boy was the most amazing sight. And then every 5 minutes or so, Prabhupada would turn around and look toward Jagannath. The devotees would clear the way so no one blocked his sight, and he had a perfect view of Jagannath, Balaram, and Subhadra. But after a while, the police came and mentioned that we couldn't keep stopping like this. We had to keep the whole thing going because the traffic jams were becoming critical. Devotees were crying and chanting and dancing, and there was much commotion. Shrutakirti. When Prabhupada was dancing, the bobbies kept on coming up and looking for someone official. Finally, they came to me and said, "You will have to tell your leader to sit down. He is causing too much of a disturbance. Everyone is becoming wild, and we can't control the crowd. So I said, "All right," but I didn't say anything to Prabhupada. So then they came again and said, "You must tell him he will have to sit down." So I said, "All right," and I tapped Prabhupada. The whole time he had been in ecstasy, dancing before the cart and encouraging everyone else to dance. He would motion with his hands and encourage the devotees to keep dancing. He kept the momentum of the festival. So I said, "Prabhupada, the policemen want you to sit down. They say you are creating havoc in the parade." Prabhupada looked at me, turned, and kept on. He completely ignored it and kept on dancing, and they couldn't do anything. Prabhupada wouldn't stop, and the police wouldn't say anything to him. Paravida. I was distributing back to Garden magazines along the whole parade route. I was exhausted, and I was having a lot of trouble keeping up with the procession. But Prabhupada was just there, and he was dancing like a young boy. I was amazed at his spiritual energy. Dhruvanath. When he came to Piccadilly Circus, Prabhupada suddenly stopped the whole procession. Piccadilly Circus, of course, was just packed with people. For about 3 minutes, Prabhupada stopped the procession and just danced and danced with the devotees all around him. Rohini Nandan. When he got to Piccadilly Circus, Prabhupada really started to dance. He was leaping off the ground. The cart was stopped. It was very similar, actually, to the description in the Chaitanya Charitamrita of how Lord Chaitanya would lead the Rath Yatra procession. So the cart was stopped, and then Prabhupada would wait for it to catch up. Yogeshwara. When we finally arrived at Trafalgar Square and Prabhupada saw the big tent and the other arrangements the devotees had made, he held up his hands again. He had been dancing and walking the entire route of the parade. It must have been at least an hour that he had been walking and dancing all the way from Hyde Park to Trafalgar Square. Rohini Nandan. When Prabhupada got to Trafalgar Square, he immediately sat down on the plinth of Nelson's column on a little Vyasasana and delivered a lecture about the holy name of Krishna. This was directly after his marathon of chanting and dancing. The next day's papers carried favorable news coverage of the festival, and Prabhupada wrote of it to a disciple in Los Angeles. "You will be glad to know that the Rath Yatra in London was very successful. The Daily Guardian had a picture on the front page of our card and stated that we were competition to the monument in the memory of Lord Nelson in Trafalgar Square. My health is good and I'm taking daily walk and speaking at the class in the morning." In another letter, Prabhupada wrote, "Our festival here was very well received, and I was so much encouraged by the whole thing that I was able to walk and dance the entire way from Hyde Park to Trafalgar Square." Srila Prabhupada settled into a regular routine at Bhaktivedanta Manor. Here at Bhaktivedanta Manor, he wrote, "The place is the nicest possible. It is calm and quiet, and the village is neat and clean. Prabhupada's room on the second floor was spacious enough to seat 50 guests comfortably, and its large windows overlooked the expansive grounds." Prabhupada said that if the devotees would clean out the lake and keep up the grounds, then he would stay always at Bhaktivedanta Manor and translate here in peace. They should get some cows, he said, and use some of the extra acreage for farming. Although the devotees had not had not long been living in the manor and had done little to improve the buildings and grounds, Prabhupada pointed out to a place where they could one day build a 30-story temple, the grandest building in all of London. He proposed that he stay for at least 2 months and install Radhakrishna deities on Janmashtami day. He would also oversee the construction of the temple room and altar. Every morning at about 6, Prabhupada would leave the manor for an hour's walk. There was no restriction as to who could join him, and sometimes as many as 20 devotees would trail behind, trying to hear anything he might say. Looking off toward the horizon, he commented that Lechmore Heath reminded him of Vrindavan. Prabhupada would walk down the lane to a place called Roundbush, stroll past a wheat field, and finally return to Lechmore Heath and the manor. A local policeman had become friends with the devotees and would regularly exchange greetings with Prabhupada. Particularly, Prabhupada liked the cleanliness of the little village, and he would often point out even the smallest pieces of trash on the manor grounds. The village, he said, was much neater than American towns. Shamsundara had promised Srila Prabhupada many interested visitors, and Srila Prabhupada reciprocated, promising that as long as the interested people kept coming, he would remain in England. Each night, one or two guests, including scholars, priests, and occasional celebrities, would come and visit with Prabhupada for a couple of hours. Prabhupada seemed especially eager to present the philosophy of Krishna consciousness to intelligent persons. As the world's foremost Vaishnava Parampara philosopher of the Gita and the Bhagavatam, he had thoroughly realized the conclusions of the Vedic literature. He was experienced in countering all challenges and atheistic philosophies and knew what to expect from Christian, Mayavadi, atheist, anyone. If a guest mentioned the name of a philosopher or school of thought unfamiliar to Prabhupada, then Prabhupada would simply ask, "What is this philosophy?" Inevitably, he would recognize the new philosophy for what it was, an old, familiar, mundane philosophy with a new twist, perhaps, easily defeated or brought to its perfection with Krishna consciousness. Prabhupada was always eager to glorify Krishna and repeat Krishna's message, and with complete enthusiastic freshness, he would present again the same points he had presented many, many times before. He said he was like a cow that gives milk in any field. Put him in India or America or England, he would always give the same nectarian milk of Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada's entire day, his early morning dictation of Chaitanya Charitamrita, morning walk, Bhagavad Gita lecture, talks with guests, revolved around philosophy. In Scotland, when a man had challenged that God needn't be presented through philosophy, Prabhupada had replied, "What do you expect me to talk? Some fairy tales?" Philosophy was necessary, especially for the so-called intelligent persons, whose minds raised so many intellectual doubts, and besides, to always be telling others about Krishna, Prabhupada said, was a symptom of love. Moved by compassion for others' suffering, Prabhupada always spoke the message of Krishna and never tired of repeating it. He was genuinely angered by the atheistic speculators who misled the people because materialistic and impersonalistic philosophies ruined a person's chances of finding the solution to life's suffering. Whenever Prabhupada heard anyone arguing the Mayavadi doctrine, he would become like fire. He could not tolerate it. He had to correct it. When, after one of Prabhupada's lectures at the manor, a boy had said he had heard someone call the chanting of Hare Krishna a little bit of a bluff, Prabhupada had replied, "Who says bluff? Who is that fool? Who is that rascal?" He had been ready to fight the atheists to glorify Krishna. These were Prabhupada's natural drives. Therefore, he could go on and on without stopping. He wanted to give people Krishna consciousness. He had no other life. Even while relaxing in the privacy of his room, he always spoke of Krishna consciousness. The devotees had invited many prominent British citizens to meet Srila Prabhupada, and the responses were good. Economist Ernst Schumacher promised to visit, as did philosopher Sir Alfred J. Ayer. When Shamsundara informed Prabhupada that Mr. Ayer was well known, Prabhupada replied, "What is his philosophy?" "Well," Shamsundar replied, "he doesn't believe in the existence of God." "I will give him evidence," Prabhupada replied. "I will ask him what he means by the existence of God. I will ask him to make a list of the deficiencies of God's existence." Prabhupada liked to meet with philosophical men and corner them and defeat them. Historian Arnold Doyenne was old and invalid. Therefore, Prabhupada agreed to visit him at his residence. Interested in discussing life after death, Dr. Doyenne asked Prabhupada about karma. Most people, he said, were afraid of death. Prabhupada agreed and added that according to a certain astrologer, one of India's recent leaders had taken birth as a dog. So they are afraid they will go down, he said. When Doyenne asked if karma could be changed, Prabhupada replied, yes, but only by bhakti, devotion to God. Arnold Doyle. Not many people in the West are thinking of this, Prabhupada. They are less intelligent. It is not good. If they take to Krishna consciousness, they can continue to work and live in the city, but they can change their consciousness. Then automatically everything will come. Srila Prabhupada asked Dr. Toynbee about the book he was writing, and the professor replied that it concerned ancient Greece's influence on the Greece of today. The Greeks came from India, Prabhupada said. Vedic culture was once all over the world. Gradually, a new type of culture, just like this recent partition of India and Pakistan, took place. Prabhupada explained how in the future the governments would call would fall to rascals and thieves whose only business would be to exploit the citizens. Food would be scarce, and the governments would levy so many taxes that the people would be harassed and go to the forests for shelter. Only the God conscious people would be free. The future would be an ocean of faults with but one saving factor. Simply by chanting Krishna's names, one could be freed. Even now, Prabhupada said, the hippies were going to the forest and the men were separated from their wives and money and were going to the hills and forests in disappointment. You can predict the future in this way, Prabhupada said. Arnold Toynbee. In India, did the politicians keep the Vedas? Prabhupada, no, they threw them away. Present Indian politicians are not very satisfied with the Vedas. They threw them in the water. I have started among the Indians and Americans, and for the next 10,000 years, Krishna consciousness will increase. Then there will be a gloomy picture of Kali Yuga. 10,000 years is not a short time. It is our duty on behalf of Krishna. Arnold, do you travel much? Prabhupada, all over the world. A bearded young priest active in social service visited Prabhupada and upon Prabhupada's prodding, debated with him about meat eating and Bible. During the discussion, Hamsaduta and Pradyumna were citing passages from the Bible against meat eating. Later, after the priest had left, Prabhupada called Hamsaduta back into his room and said, it was not very good for us to speak on the basis of the Bible. Better we stick to the Gita. Why bother to approach them for compromise or cooperation? They will never be convinced. What is the point of meeting with the Pope? Those inclined to meat eating, Prabhupada said, could always find some quote in the Bible, such as the covenant with Noah after the flood. We do not even know what ghastly things are occurring in the slaughterhouse, he said. No one sees these things. The next morning on his walk, Prabhupada continued discussing his talk with the priest. In the name of religion, Prabhupada said, they are killing. The Bhagavatam says this cheating religion is kicked out and simply worship of God is instated. Devotee, the priest last night said that Jesus ate meat, Prabhupada. Then Jesus contradicted himself. He also said, thou shalt not kill. One shouldn't imitate the Ishwaras. A hippie type mendicant in India takes ganja and claims to be a devotee of Shiva. No, we should not imitate the powerful controllers. That priest said also that the Bible does not say, thou shalt not kill, but thou shalt not murder. So I told him that if the word is actually thou shalt not murder in the original Hebrew, then Jesus must have been preaching to the 4th class, 10th class men, murderers. And the proof is that they murdered him. So much people, what they can understand about God. So such people, what can they understand about God? When I told him the priest was silent, he could not answer. Another priest came to see Prabhupada, and again the question came up. Prabhupada asked him, then you are in favor of killing? The priest replied, well, it is a fallen world. It is a fallen world, said Prabhupada, but we do not have to be among the fallen. The priest cited the covenant with Noah. Prabhupada replied, maybe Noah allowed it at that time, the time of devastation, but that doesn't mean you always have to do it. To live in such a time, one can eat anything to stay alive. But now, so many things are in abundance to keep healthy without maintaining a slaughterhouse. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, protect the cows. It is the duty of the Vaishyas. Okay, I think we'll pause here. Hare Krishna. So very nice again, continuing from our theme yesterday at our center of glories of Rath Yatra. We see Prabhupada leading the Rath Yatra today in London. Hari Bol. And the same thing like what Prabhuji was talking about of how the cart of Baladev, it travels non-stop. It goes once it starts. But Subhadra Mai, she stops and she turns around and she looks at Jagannath's Rath coming behind lovingly. So like that, Prabhupada is also walking, turning around and making sure that Jagannath is coming. And like Prabhuji was saying, Jagannath takes his own sweet time. He is in ecstasy, dancing and taking in the mood and the bhav of all the devotees. So Jagannath has a slow ride But yeah, Prabhupada, as a devotee, and um, like he's turning back and he's taking darshan of the Lord and he's dancing all along, even though he's almost 77 years age at this point in time, and he was not doing very well when he came from India, from Calcutta, when he started towards London. But again, his whole life was dedicated to the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, which is not to rest but to preach. And yeah, we see again, very nice quality of Prabhupada. Even though he was the Acharya, founder Acharya, and he could do what he wanted to do, but he calls this meeting of all the GBCs and he asks them for their advice. And then after everybody has given their opinion, then he sits up straight and then he says, okay, I will go west, but not to Hawaii, but to London, and not to rest and recuperate, but to preach. So, yes, yeah, he did what he wanted to do because, of course, he was directly connected to the parampara, connected to his Guru Maharaj, and that is what we refer to when we say that empowerment comes not by Prakritya. Sometimes we don't. That is one of the challenges we have today with the Ritvik movement, where the Ritvik are brothers and sisters. They are also Vaishnavas, pure devotees of the Lord, but they have one basic fundamental difference in opinion, that nobody besides Srila Prabhupada is a pure devotee, is an acharya who can give initiations. Right? So, but because they say Prabhupada never told anything in writing or in physical presence that so and so can become a Diksha Guru. But again, we see here, because Prabhupada is connected and internally the empowerment comes from the parampara in the heart. It is not always something that is just visible to our physical, materialistic eyes. Or, it is the vision, is spiritual vision, and the empowerment is also spiritual empowerment. So, like that. So yeah, he was empowered by his Guru Maharaj. He was empowered by the parampara. So he was doing what they were telling him to do. Of course, though externally he was seeking advice of everybody, and we see that same mood, like my Guru Maharaj and I know all the other, senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Many of them, I know I have heard from many devotees. They say similar things, that they would always take advice. Even like, for example, my Guru Maharaj, when he was building the Delhi temple, or so many temples he built all around the world, following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. But he would take advice of all his disciples also. But again, at the end, he will have the final say. He will say what needs to be done. So we see that same mood here that is coming in the current generation, Guru Parampara from Srila Prabhupada. And yeah, again, Prabhupada is reciprocating with our day-to-day activities in Cincinnati here. Haribol. This Nova thing, I remember when we went to, um, there is this place here in Kentucky. I'm forgetting the name, what it is, but the Ark of Noah, I think, or the Ark, some Ark, something. It's something. There is a ship that is there, and when we went and we visited that, when we went to Atlanta on the way back, um, during the um, when they were all on the ship also, actually they had they had vegetarian stuff in the ship. They had a nice exhibit, like Prabhupada says. Bhaktisiddhanta was very much fond of displaying everything, all the leelas of Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the dioramas. So like that, they have this in that ark encounter, I think that is what it is, the ark encounter. And there, when we went and we toured, we saw they had taken all animals, just like um, during the initial destruction, King Satyavrata, he had uh, taken all the animals and the saints in the ship with Matsya Avatar, like that. Here in the ship, they took animals, but they had a lot of vegetables, a lot of grains and fruits, because they had mentioned there that they only ate vegetarian stuff at that time. So that's something I was able to correlate. So I don't know why it was mentioned in the old covenant that they ate meat. But anyway, that's something that came to mind. Okay, anybody else would like to share anything in today's reading? Anandini Gopika Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you for reading and sharing your reflections. Wonderful. I was also reflecting that from time immemorial, the police has caused problems in Rath Yatra. So this we having that is just another pastime where the police says, "No, do this, do that." We should take it in that spirit.
Yes. Yeah. Of course, we see same mood like Prabhupada, Mataji and Mother Malati and the senior disciples of Prabhupada. They are also very fond of in the same mood. They are, even though, of course, this year she sat down on the Rath, but for the last 2 years when she came, she was always walking along, right? And always waving and like Meenakshi Muni shared when she was asking her if we should continue Rath Yatra in the same form or we should have our own. She very firmly said, no, to keep doing what you're doing, right? And so because that is the mood that Prabhupada had to preach, to share this with as many people as possible. So if we do our own Rath Yatra, it may become very, very limited and Simit Rah Jayegi. But yeah, this one is she likes because I keep seeing when at least last 2 years when I saw her, she was so fond of talking to people who are standing on the side of the road, waving to them, because that is the same mood that she's continuing to share what she learned from Srila Prabhupada. So, of course, her husband's reference here we see, how Shyam Sundar Prabhu's, sometimes Prabhupada has felt like, I think there's some little bit of exaggeration there, that there are millions of people waiting and there's Queen and Prince Charles. But yeah, we see, they brought all the devotees who were there in London. They brought so many famous personalities from London to come and visit Srila Prabhupada, and they were all impacted in some positive way. And of course, last time when Prabhupada was here for the first time, how George Harrison was inclined towards helping them, and now we have the Bhaktivedanta Manor that he has already offered to the society. So like that, a lot of wonderful contributions of all those initial disciples of Prabhupada, and yeah, they are continuing to share that wisdom to us, to all of us in the next generation, so we can carry the baton forward. And in the same mood and spirit of cooperating and working together and doing our little best in a humble mood as a service offering to our acharyas. So, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, thank you, Mataji. Anybody else would like to say anything? Pawan Prabhuji, anything?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Everything is good. Nice.
Anything that you loved from the Rath Yatra, or anything from the class yesterday about Rath Yatra?
Just the presenting, narrating, everything was so blissful, saying that the first one is the happiness and then the bliss comes
Peace.
from the Atma, and that concept was very revealing.
This eternal happiness and peace are temporary. Nice.
Right.
From the body and the mind. Yes. All right. Hare Krishna. Okay, we'll end with Vaishnava Pranam prayers. Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha anantakoti vaishnavinda ki jai Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki jai Srila Prabhupada Leelamrit ki jai all the current Vaishnav Acharyas ki jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.